Okay, guys, so the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the end of chapter 25. The extract where Marla and Tyler make a plan for basically keeping Marla and the narrator keep a plan for keeping the narrator awake so that the Tyler component of his psyche is unable to express itself and unable to carry out the actions that is obviously leading to Project Mayhem, to carry out these sort of destructive actions that are sort of threatening to of which he's threatening to lose control. Now, the first bit that's worth remarking on is this opening passage on page 182, where it says, "Right now, I can imagine him calling some Project Mayhem headquarters and reporting my whereabouts. They'll have a wall map of the city and trace my movements with little push pins. I feel tagged like a migrating goose on Wild Kingdom. They're all spying on me, keeping tabs." This is obviously a very kind of stark reversal of the notion that this organization is in some way representing male empowerment. That at this point in time, the narrator's own sense of freedom and liberty that the organization has created has in some way led to his own personal enslavement. And so obviously the critique that Palahniuk is building throughout the novel of the formulations that men create to their own disempowerment is building here, because at this point we've got this situation where the organization that the narrator has created has turned upon him and he's lost control of its dynamics. So then we have this, I think, fairly strong critique of the hierarchical structure of Fight Club and its logical end expression in Project Mayhem. A little further down, Marla says, "You can take all 6 of these and not get stick to your stomach," Marla says, "but you have to take them by putting them up your butt." Oh, this is pleasant. Marla says, "I'm not making this up. We can get something stronger later, some real drugs like cross tops or black beauties or alligators. I'm not putting these pills up my ass. Then only take 2. Where are we going to go? Bowling. It's open all night. And they won't let you sleep there. Everywhere we go, I say, guys on the street think I'm Tyler Durden." So, again, I think this is obviously, again, another one of these comic elements that people misinterpret in this text all the time, that we've got this male character who has been searching for empowerment and a reconnection with his masculine virility, taking suppositories, which obviously has a very critical, satirical connotation in terms of virile masculinity. Palahniuk develops this throughout the extract. He says, "Is that why the bus driver let us fry for free? Yeah, and that's why the 2 guys on the bus gave us their seats, so what's your point? I don't think it's enough to just hide out. We have to do something to get rid of Tyler. I dated a guy once who used to like to wear my clothes," Marla says. "You know, dresses, hats with veils. We could dress you up and sneak you around." So again, the second element to this critique of masculine empowerment is the fact that she's now suggesting that he wears female clothes. And then he resists this and says, "I'm not cross-dressing and I'm not putting pills up my ass." And then she says even further, "It gets worse," Marla says. "I dated a guy once who wanted me to fake a lesbian scene with his blow-up doll. I could imagine myself becoming one of Marla's stories. I dated a guy once who was a split personality. I dated this other guy who used one of those penis enlargement systems. I ask, what time is it? 4 a.m. In another 3 hours I have to be at work. Take your pills," Marla says. "You being Tyler Durden and all, they'll probably let us bowl for free. Hey, before we get rid of Tyler, can we go shopping? We could get a nice car, some clothes, some CDs. There's an upside to all this free stuff. Marla." Okay, forget it. So I think this is the kind of peak of the irony here for an organization that is precipitated by anti-consumerist sentiment. You know, the organization is seen as some form of antidote to the alienation that's been created by contemporary consumer capitalism. And at this point, we have the situation where, at its logical peak, one of the benefits and the upside of it is that they get free stuff and can go shopping. So there's the peak of the irony, I think, involves the critique of Fight Club's kind of hypocritical ideological underpinnings. And again, you remember it has that doubleness that, you know, the movie itself is fully aware of and plays with, of supposedly being a kind of a fairly strong sort of critique of consumerism, and then at the same time being a multi-million Hollywood blockbuster that made the careers of two of the most famous actors. So it's got this sense of both, critique and irony and self-consciousness about itself in the same way that the novel does. The next section that I want us to focus on is what happens following this. And this is, I think, an even greater suggestion of the id component of the narrator's psyche running out of control and spiraling out of control, and actually threatening the narrator's psychological integrity. So it begins here. I'm the pit of Joe's stomach. It's my desk. I know my boss is dead. The 3 ways to make napalm. I knew Tyler was going to kill my boss. The second I smelled gasoline on my hands, when I said I wanted out of my job, I was giving him permission. Be my guest. Kill my boss. Oh, Tyler, I know a computer blew up. I know this because Tyler knows this. I don't want to know this, but you use a jeweler's drill to drill a hole through the top of a computer monitor. All the space monkeys know this. I typed up Tyler's notes. This is a new version of the light bulb bomb, where you drill a hole in the light bulb and fill the bulb with gasoline. Plug the hole with wax or silicone, then screw the bulb into a socket and let someone walk into the room and throw the switch. All the way through this passage, we have this irritable oscillation between the narrator in some form of present, reflective first person, and then switching from that narrative voice to Tyler's consciousness, which is obviously, again, his own id. It's a psychological projection. And so the switching between the two that constructs this fragmentary narration in this passage gives us, again, the sense of their duality and the narrator's subjective fragmentation, but also here, because of the nature of this action where Tyler, in inverted commas, the narrator himself, has killed his own boss, we've got the events that precipitate his internal crisis and that have resulted in him becoming a murderer. He has here lost full control of the id. So this narrative, in a Freudian perspective, about the reassimilation of virile masculinity into the self through the ability to reconcile the id, has spiraled out of control here, and the destructive nature of that impulsive part of the psyche has reached its kind of logical expression in the murder of this man's boss. And so again, these suggestions that the narrator's creation and the narrator's psychic projection have in some ways spiraled out of control and led to the domination of himself by a small component of his psyche developed through this kind of murderous action that he carries out here. And again, that fragmentary narration is one of the ways that Palahniuk develops this sense of subjective crisis. Now, he furthers this by having slightly more self-conscious reflection at the bottom of page 186, which says, the problem is I sort of liked my boss. If you're male and you're Christian and living in America, your father is your model for God, and sometimes you find your father in your career, except Tyler didn't like my boss. The police would be looking for me. I was the last person out of the building last Friday night. I woke up at my desk with my breath condensed on the desktop and Tyler on the telephone telling me, go outside, we have a car. So in this passage here, again, you've got this shifting, this sort of oscillation between the narrator in a line like this, the narrator in his, ego, fully reconciled consciousness, and then these ideological offerings, which are pure Tyler. So we've got this id expression here. So again, that fragmentary narration here is again used to show us the way that the narrator is not in full control of these components of himself. So here, he's not in full control of this. And it's led him now down the path of committing, murder. And so the things that are, that Palahniuk sort of adumbrates this, he foreshadows this throughout the text by giving us all these suggestions about the way in which Tyler gains increasing control over his psyche, how his id is gaining increasing control over his psyche. Here, it obviously results in this individual becoming completely the reverse of the way that he begins the novel. In the beginning of the novel, he's very passive, feels effeminate, feels alienated, but here has become dominated by the virile, aggressive component of his psyche, and it's led him to become a murderer. So there's obviously a fairly strong critical component to this novel about our ability as men to control this component of the psyche, to control this impulsive, potentially violent part of the Freudian psyche, the id. The final part of this chapter is where I think Palahniuk ramps up the gender satire the most explicitly, because the bus driver on this bus that the narrator attempts to make a getaway on begins the confrontation with him. He says, "You're a brave man," the bus driver says, "to make yourself a homework assignment." The mechanic tells the bus driver, "Shut up, the lookout doesn't say shit. You know one of the space monkeys has a rubber band to wrap around your nuts. They fill up the front of the bus." The mechanic says, "You know the drill, Mr. Durden. You said it yourself. You said if anyone ever tries to shut down the club even then we have to get him by the nuts. Gonads, jewels, testes, huevos." As if we've somehow missed what we're talking about here. Picture the best part of yourself frozen in a sandwich bag at the Paper Street Soap Company. "You know it's useless to fight us," the mechanic says. The bus driver chews his sandwich and watches us in the overhead mirror. A police siren wails, coming closer. A tractor rattles across a field in the distance. Birds, a window in the back of the bus is half open. Clouds, weeds grow at the edge of the gravel turnaround. Bees or flies buzz around the weeds. "We're just after a little collateral," the Fight Club mechanic says. "This isn't just a threat this time, Mr. Durden. This time we have to cut them." So here, it's very easy to see this through the point of the climactic nature of the narrative and the sort of excitement that's involved in the tension here. But it is worth retaining an awareness that Fight Club is precipitated by a supposed crisis in masculinity. So we have a crisis in masculinity that brings this organization about in the first place. And here the organization is spiraling out of control of its creator, literally castrating him, literally threatening to castrate him. So if this organization is about masculine empowerment, then what we have here is a very, very obvious, ironic reversal of its aims. So there's a literal threat to reverse its stated aims in the beginning. If that's not ironic, I don't know what is. This is where the irony is actually quite heavy-handed here and becomes